Hi everyone, I am Nurul Syafiqah binti Sulaiman from BA 2424F. I would like to present about Musharakah Mutanaqisah. Without wasting time, let's get started. Musharakah Mutanaqisah is a contract of partnership between two parties where one partner gradually buys the whole parts of the property. It is known as diminishing musharakah. It also is an innovative and flexible tool for Islamic financing in the area of business working capital, asset acquisition and property venture. Musharakah Mutanaqisah is a combination of musharakah, ijarah and al-bay. This contract have three stages. Firstly, it consists of musharakah between the customer and the bank. This is done through the contract of syarikat al-milk. Secondly, it consists of ijarah contract where the customer rents the bank's portion in the house and makes the rental payment. Lastly, if the customer wants to fully own the house, the customer will continue pay gradually. This is example of product Musharakah Mutanaqisah. Firstly, we have Bank Affin Islamic. It is called as Musharakah Mutanaqisah Term Financing I. Secondly, we have Citibank. It is called as Citibank Home Partner I. And lastly, we have Maybank Islamic. It is called as Musharakah Mutanaqisah Term Financing I. There are three differences of home financing and home loan. Firstly, looking the relationship between bank and customer. In Islamic banking, the customer partners with the bank to purchase a house, then in return buy the bank share. While in conventional financial system, the bank claims money and creates creditor and debtor relationship. Secondly is computation of interest or profit. In Islamic home financing, profit is charged based on outstanding principal with no compounding element involved. Thus, the total profit payable for the financing will be much lower as compared with conventional loans. While in conventional home loan, interest is computed and charged based on compounding interest and principal. Lastly is exit penalty or lock-in period for early settlement. In Islamic home financing, the customer can exit anytime without a penalty. Based on the principle of fairness, the customer is encouraged to settle their obligations and not be penalized by an exit fee if they make an early settlement. While in the conventional home loan, there is an exit penalty and lock-in period if the customer makes an early settlement. There are also have differences between Baik Bitaman Ajil and Musharakah Mutanaqisah. The first differences is number of contract. In BBA, it follows the murabahah concept of buying and selling of property, while in Musharakah Mutanaqisah, it have two separate contracts. The first contract is where the bank and the customer enter into a joint partnership to own the house. And the second contract is ijarah, which involves the leasing of the property to the partner. Secondly is reflection of market value. Under BBA, the selling price of the house does not reflect the market value since the markup for the deferred payment is quite substantial. While under Musharakah Mutanaqisah, the value of house always reflect the market price and the rental is determined by the market rental values. Thirdly is returns. Under BBA, the returns is based on fixed selling price. While in Musharakah Mutanaqisah, the financial is not tied to a fixed profit rate. This is because the rental rate can be revised periodically to reflect current market conditions. Indeed, the rental can be tied to some economic variables such as rental index and house price index. Lastly is early settlement. Customer is entitled for rebate in the event of early settlement. Besides that, BBA is more complicated and buyer only can own the property right after the full payment of the full tenure has been made. While Musharakah Mutanaqisah is a more flexible financing structure as the customer can own the property earlier by redeem the principal sum of the financial faster without the need to compute rebates. Now, let's move on to the modus operandi of Musharakah Mutanaqisah home financing. There are 6 steps that we need to know. Firstly, the customer approaches the housing developer or seller and identifies the house that he wishes to buy. He requests the seller to provide a price quotation and other relevant details. Then, the customer approaches the bank for financing. The customer and the bank enter into a Musharakah Mutanaqisah contract. Thirdly, the customer and the bank jointly purchase the property. Assume that the customer pays 10% of the price and the bank pays 90% of the price. Then, the bank leases its portion of the property to the customer. After that, the customer pays the lease rental with an additional amount to gradually buy the bank's ownership in the property. And lastly, at the end of the lease term, the partnership will be terminated with the customer owning 100% of the property and the title transferred to the customer. These are advantages of Musharakah Mutanaqisah. Firstly, this contract is cheaper and affordable. It is relatively cheaper or more affordable mode of finance because BBA financing put extra pressure on customer and causes hardship for them. Secondly, this contract is short period of financing, which would be beneficial for both the bank and the customer. This is because the bank will get the funds invested, which could be reinvested into new projects, while the customer will be able to acquire the needed asset in shorter period of time. Lastly, it is in line with Maqasid Syariah, which promotes maslahah. It removes the hardship from the people and serves public interest, which is desirable. For example, customer unable to pay when the price is too high. However, there are also have disadvantages of this contract. Firstly, this contract is less attractive for the banks because it would bring lower profit to Islamic banks. But using BBA mode financing, Islamic banks earn higher profits with less risk and efforts invested in the projects. Then, price change over the time. This can cause difficulty for the banks to keep track of the payment changes. For example, as the rental rate increase, it may be difficult for the bank to convince the customer that they has to pay higher rental on the property. Lastly, legal amendment may be needed, especially with regards to the tax of the property. This is because to avoid the customer from taxed twice for the same property. Do you know how does home finance work in Islamic bank? Shihan is a businessman who wants to make his dream home a reality. Shihan doesn't have enough funds to purchase the home outright. He decides to approach bank to get a home loan, but then remembers the God has permitted trade and forbidden interest. Having heard non-interest-based home financing, Shihan approaches an Islamic bank to find out is there any possibility to purchase home through installments. The Islamic banker explained the concept of home financing is based on partnership, where the bank and customer will jointly purchase the selected house, to which the customer contributes certain value as his share, and the bank will contribute the balance amount. Now, the house is owned by the Shihan and the bank. However, since Shihan wants to enjoy the complete usage of the house, the bank agrees to rent each share of the house for an agreed rate. Since Shihan also wants to own full ownership of the house, the bank also agreed to gradually sell portion of ownership to Shihan until Shihan becomes full owner of the house. He will continue to pay rent for the portion owned by the bank, and he will enjoy full ownership. This method is called as diminishing musharakah in Islamic banking terms. Shihan monthly installment will comprise of two components, the rent and the amount paid to purchase the house from the bank. Each month, when he pays the installment, the bank ownership reduces, and therefore rent payable reduces with the purchase of last portion. Shihan becomes the ultimate owner of his dream house.